Illegal migrant hotel manager blows whistle on NGOs profiting from migrant trafficking. Folks, you just can't make this stuff up. That our government is so callous and so uncaring and so used to gaslighting the American public that they don't even care when whistleblowers come forward and are like, hey, hi, my name is Carlos Arellano. I have been working for Human Health Services, and children are being trafficked into our country, and we are doing the trafficking, and these children are suffering, and they are being abused, and we don't even know where we're putting them. And my gosh, will anybody listen to me? Will anyone listen to me? That's what these whistleblowers are wondering. Congress, will you listen to me? And wait till you hear a story. It's going to blow your mind. Because after he came forward and even briefed Congress, there were members of Congress that chose to take other people instead of him, like the person that's actually on the ground doing the work, the hard work, the actual worker, the one that can prove what is going on, instead of bringing in somebody like Carlos Arellano, who we have on this show. They bring in other people to hearings, people that have maybe a little bit more star-studded, personalities. I don't even know what else to say. Isn't that sad? But Carlos has a story, and he is going to continue to expose the corruption inside our own government. And he's doing so by going on shows, as many as he can, talking to people about what he was witness to. And he's going to tell you exactly what is happening in New York City in those hotels with the illegal migrants, what he saw, what is happening to the children, what is happening to the children from the time they're on the border to the time they get trafficked by the Biden administration into the United States. And did you know that only 2% of the over 140,000 migrants in New York City have actually even applied for work permits? They're not even trying to work. Folks, this is your taxpayer dollars at work. Those migrants cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Hundreds of millions of dollars. NGOs are pocketing the money. These hotels are pocketing the money. There are people pocketing the money. It is absolutely insane. I saw it with my own eyes. I was there. I saw it at the Roosevelt Hotel. I saw it around Times Square. I see it up and down the streets with people just living on the sidewalks, begging for money, going back to hotels, getting high. Others that are families that are maybe innocent and they really don't operate that way. They don't even know where to go. In fact, they don't even know how to apply for a work permit. They're just being used. They're being used by the system. And Americans are paying a huge and heavy price for this. A toll that I think will not even be imagined for decades to come. And we're already seeing the repercussions of it right now in our cities. Is this even sustainable to you? Should this not be the number one issue at, the ballot box in 2024? I don't know. Does this seem like a good use of your money? Are you okay with that? And I'm going to tell you where this money is going, because Carlos is going to tell you where the money is going. He's the manager of one of those hotels, and he is on the show with me today. He blew the whistle on this corrupt scheme, and I cannot wait for you to listen. So do not go anywhere. But first, ExpressVPN. I love ExpressVPN. I've talked about them before on the Sara Carter Show. I love the fact that, if people are trying to target me on the internet, they think I'm like in Sweden. They think I'm in Norway. They think I'm in Russia. They cannot see where I am at. Internet service providers operate like monopolies in regions they serve. Even worse, many ISPs log your internet activity and then sell that data onto other big tech companies or advertisers. To prevent them from seeing my internet activity, I protect my devices with ExpressVPN. Current offer, listen to this. Visit expressvpn.com/Sarah to get 3 extra months free. Listen to that. Visit expressvpn.com expressvpn.com/Sarah to get 3 extra months free. I recommend ExpressVPN as the best way to hide your online activity. Like I said, people don't know where I'm at. They don't know where my ISP is. You just download the app, tap one button, and then you're protected. It's as simple as that. Visit expressvpn.com/Sarah. That's EXPRESS VPN.com/Sarah, and you'll get 3 extra months free. That's expressvpn.com/Sarah, SARA, to learn more. I am so grateful to have Carlos Arellano on the show today. He is I would say an American hero, and a hero to migrant children that have been abused on this horrific open border Biden policy that has been allowed to happen in our country. He is a transportation specialist for the Department of Health and Human Services. He also was one of 4 managers that actually worked in a migration hotel in New York City. It's called the Row in New York Hotel, and we'll get into details about that when he comes on. But I want you guys to understand he was one of 4 managers, and he was working the 2 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. shift at this hotel. And what he has seen and what he has exposed has gone viral because he was actually on the inside. He was on the inside watching what was going on and was willing to stand up and blow the whistle on this corrupt scheme. You're absolutely my hero, Carlos. Thank you so much for everything. And thank you for coming on the show.
No, thank you for having me. It's not, aside from the New York City stuff, when I speak on some of my past, a lot of people will then either not respond or not want to touch some of these subjects. So I'm honored and thankful that you're having me on, because there's not many people who will take these subjects on.
I don't even understand why not. And these are the same people. And I'm just going to say it. There's a lot of Democrats out there. You should be on MSNBC. You should be on CNN 24/7. You've been on Fox quite a bit, but you should be on radio and everywhere. You should be able to tell this story across the country. And it should be a bipartisan issue. It shouldn't reflect it whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, because this is about saving lives. This is about children. And for people who act like they care about immigrants, I'm going to call them out on this. They show very little lack of care for the children that I have seen on that border and what happens to them after they get in the United States. Let's start with that. I'm going to let you describe the very beginning. I mean, so you were a transportation specialist for the Department of Health and Human Services. Then you went on to work as a manager at one of these migration hotels that they've taken. Let's just start from the beginning. In the beginning, where did you get started? Were you just driving the migrants? What was happening?
So I've actually worked in this my whole adult life. I worked in the immigration contracting field, not just for under this administration, but I worked under the Trump administration as well. And when I worked under the Trump administration, I was one of those that was freaking out saying, oh, I'm Hispanic. My life is going to be over because President Trump won. And boy, did my job prove me wrong big time, because under President Trump's administration, I also did the escorting, which is when you get on the airplanes with the children who arrive here without parents, without legal guardians, and you take them, you move them from point A to point B. So you move them to reunite with a sponsor, they like to call it, which is sometimes is a family member, but it's not always the case. And the reason why I bring this up is because under the Trump administration, there's times where I wouldn't even get called for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because there was not that many children here. And it was still an issue, but not to the point where the way it is now. So now you fast forward to these present years, there's been years where, for example, in 2021, where you move one child, you get back to the hotel, and they tell you you have 2 hours to shower, change, take a nap, and in 2 hours you're expected back at work to pick up another child because you're going to head right back out. So yeah, so when people tell me, well, under the Trump administration, they also escorted children, and this has been going on since the Trump administration, and I tell them, yeah, I worked under it too. And when I was under the Trump administration, I actively voted for Beto O'Rourke, the Democrat in Texas. I voted for him. I regret it, but I voted for him. And I voted.
It's okay. I'll forgive you for that. But I get it.
Yeah. Thank you. But yeah, I was, the way I think now is not the way I used to think when I first did this job. So
Right.
people used to tell me, well, you've been a Republican your whole life. I'm like, no, I come from a really deep blue area politics is the least of it, especially when you work with children. So people try to come at me from all angles, and I have an answer for everything. And
well, let me tell you, I know President Trump. I've interviewed him before a number of times, and the people that are around him have always said this, and this is always what I have seen from the president when it comes to immigration issues. One of the biggest concerns for him has always been the children. He is torn up inside over that. He thinks about it. He asks questions about it. Even Stephen Miller, who worked closely with him, who really was targeted by the left for his, strong immigration policy it was because of the kids. It was because children were being abused. It was because children were being kidnapped and women were being raped. He was like, this is just not right. This is not acceptable. There has to be a legal path to becoming an American citizen, and we can't just open the floodgates and allow the drug cartels and human traffickers and God only know who else to be in control of this.
No, exactly. When I first started, one of the things that got me to change to stop thinking about it in a politics kind of way was that under President Trump's administration, I was inside a camp in the Valley, and I had a child who came up to me, and the child said, hey, the guy who's with me is touching me sexually, and he's not my father. He told Border Patrol that he's my father, but he's not my father. So I was under that situation, I was allowed to speak up for him, and I was allowed to flag a Border Patrol agent and tell him what the child just told me. But then, so with that situation, they ended up separating the child and the person who had kidnapped him. And long story short, they ended up finding out, they did a dental swab and they did some other DNA testing, and they ended up finding out that they were not related. And under the President Biden administration, as a contractor, you're told you're just a contractor. You cannot speak up. If you speak up, you're going to be fired because you're going to get us into legal issues. If a child tells you something, you need to ignore it because you should not even be talking to these children, just escorting them. So had that been under President Biden administration, I would have been fired for speaking up for the child. So that's one of the situations where it got me to start like, okay, Carlos, you got to leave politics out of this. This situation's insane now. President Trump's administration actually cared for the children. And that got me to change a lot of the ways that I used to think. And right. It's very sad because those situations, the media will just say, President Trump separated 5,000 children from their families. But what they leave out is that they were separated because there was concern, there was red flags of the child saying, this is not my father. This person, I just met him a week ago. I met him along the way here. Those were the reasons for the separations, but the media, the mainstream media never talked about it. So I was there firsthand to see why they were being separated. And you fast forward to now, there's 85,000 children missing. Why? Because they don't do DNA testing anymore. And I'm sure you know, because you're at the border all the time, is that this administration did away with the DNA testing. So that's why you have less children being separated, but you have more children missing now.
Absolutely. You have more children missing. You have people coming across the border with the so-called same uncle in every, whether that's New York or Chicago or someplace else. And we know that a lot of these girls, these young women that are being transported outside to this uncle, supposedly, they're probably being sexually abused or being run in prostitution rings. And with the example that you gave of this poor child, I've seen that myself. In fact, not too long ago, we were very concerned about a child. I was with the senators on the border, and one of the groups that had just come across, it was the same situation. It was a man holding a young girl, about maybe 10 years old, very tight to himself. They didn't look alike. And the little girl, she was very nervous, and we're like, well, where's your mother? And she kept looking at the man like she didn't know what to say, and it was a very stressful situation where it's like, how can you just trust that these children are actually with their guardians or with their mom and dad? You can't. And you're right. That was a huge issue with President Trump. It was the reason why a lot of kids were separated, because they didn't want them being abused. They knew a lot of the children were being brought into the country as unaccompanied minors, but being utilized by the people that were being trafficked so that they could look like they were family units and have a better chance at staying in the country. And so that was the reason why. You went on to work, though, to manage one of the largest migration hotels, right? It was Row in New York.
Yes, exactly. The Row NYC Hotel it's on 700 and 8th Avenue, a block away from Times Square.
So crazy. I'm around there all the time. Here's the Row. It's got 4 stars. Like if Fox would see that, they would probably book me a room there. Because they were like, because it's so close to Fox Studios, so crazy. They would just be like, oh, it's 4 stars. Let's book her a room there. A good thing they have another hotel they're working with right now. But I'm telling you, it would be that simple. So here's a supposed 4-star hotel that is now pretty much a migrant shelter, and it's been that way for a year. Describe what it was like going there the first time.
So my first day, I ended up getting slapped by a migrant my very first day. And it's because as soon as I got there, it was so insane, because it's 28 floors, 5,000 migrants spread across 28 floors. And the staff available for each shift is only 200 staff. So, these 200 staff members could be the best staff members in the world, but it's still not enough. The ratio is so out of hand. We would always talk about it, saying, hey, one of these days, if the migrants decide that they want to do something to us, they actually can, because it's 5,000 migrants and 200 staff members. So we would always joke about, well, what window can we jump out of without breaking our bones too much, or because it was a serious concern. So my very first day in the Row NYC, they said, hey, look, this is the way it's working. And then 5 minutes into my shift, on the radios, we get called that there's a woman fighting with her husband, and it's on the 26th floor. And everybody was so scared, because supposedly, like, they were saying, oh, there's banging on the windows. And we were like, oh my gosh, if they break a window and they fall out of the window, it's going to be the 26th floor. That's going to be very terrible. So we ran up there.
Just like total mayhem. You got people doing everything.
Yeah, so we run up there. And while we're up there, the radios start going off saying, there's a man beating his child on the 14th floor. So then some of the staff run off to the 14th floor. So while I'm dealing with this man beating this woman up on the 26th floor, on the 14th floor, you got a father beating the crap out of his child. And then the radios go off again saying, there's a fight breaking out. We don't know what's going on, but it's a big fight, and it's on the 6th floor. And that's what a day to day at the Royal NYC looks like. It's just one situation after the other. It's the 23rd floor, the 8th floor, the 6th floor, the 5th floor, and when I
Were
initially
any of the floors available for like regular guests from New York, or did they just take over the whole hotel? I've always wondered this because during COVID, I ended up staying at hotels along the border that I didn't realize were packed with COVID patients from the border. I was like, that's great. I'm like, thanks so much. I caught COVID 3 times. But I was like, but I was any floor left for regular, New York City visitors, I guess,
so
or vacationers?
in October of last year, we were only taking up half the hotel, and then slowly, as October went on into November, took over the whole hotel. But even until my last day there, which was this summer of this year, while I was still there this summer.
Wow.
My whole time that I was there, we were still getting people saying, "Hey, I booked this. My wife and I booked this for our honeymoon. We're from Europe and we booked this last year. No one bothered to tell us that it was canceled." So it was always, "Carlos, come down to the lobby. There's an upset person with his wife from Europe, and we need to figure this out." Okay, and the hotel just accepted the $1 million contract from the city, but they didn't bother canceling all these reservations that they had.
Let's talk about that, because this is huge amounts of money. And by the way, you probably told them, I'm guessing, you're like, you know what? You're going to not regret this. You got to go get another hotel room, because you could end up on the 16th floor with the guy that beats his wife, or the 6th floor with the guy who's like, you don't know, because you got people coming into the hotel and you're basically holding migrants that we have no real background checks on. We don't really know what's going on with them, and they don't know. And even if they're, which I'm sure the majority of them are innocent people being caught up in this horrible system, but because they're allowed to, because of our government, but they're probably wondering, what am I supposed to do? Where do I go? Do I get a job? How do I make money? And that's what I want to talk about, the money part. I mean, the hotel had a huge contract, right? It was a huge contract.
So there's a total of 9 companies inside the Row NYC, and they all have their own contracts with the city. It's not one giant contract where they all are under the same one. Everybody has their own deal going on. And the hotel has their own contract just for lending the place out. So it's not like they're having to share some of the money on another contract. The hotel is getting their own separate $1 million contract. I cannot speak onto the amounts of that they're making. What I can speak on is my employers. They were making $260 million every renewal.
Every what? $260 million every what?
Every time it's time to renew, which is around every 6 to 8 weeks, it's time to renew. And the contract is, every time it gets renewed, it's worth $260 million.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's huge. And I'm sure you didn't get a big cut of it, right? You didn't get a big cut of it. They just paid you a regular salary.
Yeah, I was making $40 an hour there.
Yeah, but no extra bonus for the guy that was for putting your life on the line or anything like that, and having to play police.
No, there were 7 full-time employees, and they were my bosses, and they were supposed to be there with us, but they were only there by cell phone, by Microsoft Teams chat. So I was basically the fall guy. While they were making all these $1 million with their contract, I was basically just the dummy, the dummy in place.
I always call it, I know how you feel. Sometimes that's the way I feel, even as a journalist. I'm down there telling the story, taking it to Congress, saying, here's proof of the abuse. You're doing the same. You literally are the whistleblower and an investigative journalist, in my opinion. You're doing the job that other people should have been doing to be a voice for you. But you're a voice for yourself, and you take it, and then you're like, is anybody going to do anything with this? And instead of being hailed for your bravery, they come after you for being a whistleblower.
Oh yeah, and even I've had talks with DC with people in Congress, and they will. In the end, I find out they were only trying to use me to get attention for a hearing. So there was this one hearing where they bumped me off for Tim Ballard for Sound of Freedom. So I was really close to testifying, but then they had the option to go with Tim Ballard from Sound of Freedom, and they went with him. And I've been told
can I
that,
stop right there? This is what pisses me off more than anything. This makes me mad. I wish I would have known you then, because I would have made a few phone calls too, just to talk about how pissed I am. Here is a real worker. Folks, I want you to hear this. Every one of you out there that's listening to this, this happens in Washington all the time. They are such snobs, and they think that by, buddying up to people. I knew him from way back when. Tim's fine. He's been doing work, but it wasn't the work that they needed to expose during those hearings. I know what you're talking about. You should have been up there. You should have been able to tell your story. It is a powerful one, and it is one that would have moved the country because you saw it firsthand. So how did you feel? I mean, really, how did you feel when you got that phone call? Were you like, you just like give him the stinky eye, like stare right at him?
I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated because I still get phone calls, and they want to have me on the phone for 2 to 3 hours, and they want to have repeated phone calls about 3 times a week. And then they will follow up with, hey, can you speak on the phone again? And then in the end, they'll say, oh, we're going to go with someone else, or it's not going to work out this time, but we'll be in touch. This has happened to me 4 or 5 different times already for separate hearings and separate offices. And it's gotten to the point where it frustrates me because I also have a life. I'm trying to rebuild my life because after coming out as a whistleblower twice, and the second time being on mainstream media, it kind of blew my life up. So a lot of the connections that I had in my professional career, they don't talk to me anymore. And it's kind of like I'm having to start from scratch again. And I'm okay with that. I'm not complaining, They asked me, hey, Carlos, what's next for you?
You can complain a little. Carlos, you can complain a little. I know. Look, Carlos should complain. You should complain. And I'm telling the audience, I mean, I'm sure everybody sitting in their kitchen right now or driving their car listening to this is going to be like, yes, complain. Because being a whistleblower takes a lot of bravery, and it comes with a heavy price. But you should have the respect, and you should be treated with respect by those that say they are fighting for better immigration policy and for the struggle for all of these children that are being trafficked into our country illegally. And you are one of the very few people, you and several others. By the way, I saw some of your documentary. It's fantastic. You're welcome. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But you and some others are the only people that have come out of these woodworks, to actually do the right thing, to say, you know what, I'm not going to sell out. I'm going to tell the truth. That has to be very, very difficult. Introducing Beam Dream. We've been raving about Beam's Dream Powder, their healthy hot cocoa for sleep. And today, my listeners get a special discount on Beam's Dream Powder, their best-selling healthy hot cocoa for sleep with, guess what, no added sugar. Now available, and listen to this, you're going to love these, in delicious seasonal flavors like cinnamon cocoa, I have that one, and sea salt caramel, my favorite, and white chocolate peppermint. What is better than that for Christmas? Better sleep has never tasted better. A recent clinical study revealed Dream helped 93% of users wake up feeling more refreshed, and 93% reported that Dream helped them get a more restful night's sleep. I can attest to that. I feel so much better. Whenever I take Beam Dream, I actually wake up refreshed. I don't feel groggy. I don't feel like I'm bouncing off the walls. I feel good. I feel better. And I can't wait to start my day. You're going to feel the same way. And what's even nicer is that it's a hot cocoa mix. So I can take it with me anywhere. You mix it with water, you mix it with milk, whatever you like. I like milk. And I get a really great night's sleep. If you want to try Beam's best-selling Dream Powder, take advantage of their biggest sale of the year and get up to 50% off for a limited time when you go to shopbeam.com/Sara Carter. That's SARACARTER. The discount is auto-applied at checkout. No code necessary. That's shopbeam.com/Sara Carter, SARACARTER, for up to 50% off. Was there one particular incident or thing that happened where you said, you know what? I'm going to blow the whistle. This is it.
The first time around, when I was working with the children, I got an email from my employers admitting to handing off children to the wrong people. And this email is what reason why Jesse Waters covered it.
Let's talk about the email.
Yeah.
Talk about the email, because a lot of people that didn't watch Jesse, although I'm sure every single one of you did, right, Jesse? Everybody watched it. But what happened with the email? Talk about it.
So the email, so when you pick a child up, you get a vanilla folder, and in the vanilla folder, you get a paper copy ID of the face of a sponsor for the child. And the face of the sponsor is an ID that they have to give to you in person at the airport when they pick the child up. So you do this in airport baggage claim. And in baggage claim, they're supposed to hand you the ID of the paper copy that you have. And you have to hold up the paper copy ID on one side and the physical ID that the sponsor gives you together. And you have to take picture right there of both on a company phone. And when you fly back home the next day, the supervisors review the picture and the phone. And what this email was saying was that a lot of the IDs that were approved for the sponsor that was supposed to be at the airport, for example, would be the picture of a female. But the picture of the ID that was given to the escort, to the transportation specialist at the airport, of the sponsor who showed up to receive the child, is a picture of an ID picture of a male. So the escorts were still accepting the ID of a male, even though it was a female who was supposed to show up, taking pictures of the IDs, handing the child off, and leaving. And there's so many loopholes to this because a supervisor cannot see in real time the ID that you're accepting. They don't see it until you fly back 24 hours the next day. And that's 24 hours that you gave the child off to the wrong person, you know? So you're never going to see that child again. This 24 hours is enough for something terrible to happen. So that was a breaking point with that email. It was, okay, there was suspicion at first, there was rumors, coworkers talking about bad stuff going on. But when you start hearing these stories, like, for example, your viewers, when they're hearing me talk, someone's going to be like, this is too crazy. It's crazy to believe this, to accept this. That was me in real time. There's no way that this is happening and I'm working for these type of people, you know? It's hard to accept it. So when I got the email, I said, okay, these are my bosses, my superiors admitting to it. And this is enough confirmation now to make me sick enough to not want to be part of it anymore. So after that email, I say, okay, this is enough. I have to find a reporter to speak to. I have to speak out on it, and I have to separate myself from this place. And that was the first time around. And then in the Row, New York City hotel, that situation, my breaking point there was, and I shared the text on the Fox with Savannah Hernandez and a couple of other interviews. I was clocking out for my shift at the Row, New York City, and I get to the lobby, and there's a big group huddled up I go into the circle and I said, I just can't ignore this. Even though I'm clocked out, let me see what's going on. Turns out there was a 10-year-old who was drunk. And I shared her text message in some interviews and a couple of other paperwork where I send it off to the social worker in the hotel in the Row NYC. I'm off the clock for the night, so legally I can't do anything, but hey, social worker, there's a 10-year-old who's drunk in the lobby. And then I followed up by telling the social worker, we checked in the system, and the parents for this 10-year-old checked out of the hotel 2 days ago. So we can see when migrants come in and out of the hotel, what time they checked out, what time they checked back in. And it was showing us that the parents had not been back to the hotel in 2 days. So they left the 10-year-old in the hotel by themselves, and they ended up getting drunk.
That is just the most disturbing story, just what happens to these children and how little care our government has. And this is what, I don't know, I'm going to ask you this. Does it infuriate you? Because I think there's a misconception about Latinos. My mom was an immigrant from Cuba. I'm the firstborn on her side, an immigrant Cuban family, that my mom worked in a factory. She worked hard after my dad died to try to give me and my brother a life. And she did. But the thing is that there's this misconception. And I'm with the Hispanic Leadership Conference right now, talking to people about grassroots efforts to reach Hispanic people out across the country, that they think everybody's just a Democrat, that every Hispanic is just the same, that we're all going to be in agreement with, we should have open immigration policy. But we're normal people. We see what's going on and we're like, wait a minute, this is BS. Our kids are dying. And you don't even care. You're just using us for political purposes. Do you feel that way sometimes?
No, exactly. And it infuriates me because they think, you're Hispanic, you need to vote Democrat. If not, you're not a real Hispanic. And, it's just, they think you're dumb enough to not make the decision for yourself. And when I first got into this type of work, I looked at it as humanitarian work. I said, hey, there's children who are showing up without parents to the country. Let me not just be all talk about it, and let me be about it, and let me try to go and work with these children and make a difference. Because when you're with these children in the airport, you can buy them food, you can buy them whatever you want, and you get reimbursed for it. But a lot of the times I would say, what's $2 for a Coke, for a soft drink? And these are children, they're innocent. They're not meant to be part of a political thing. And when I joined this type of work, I tried to join to do something good. But whenever the government has their hands involved in it, it's just not going to be, especially with this administration, there's no good in it anymore. It's just terrible.
It's just a big mess. And by the way, Carlos, you are still doing the right thing. You are still doing a good thing, and you are still there for these children, because you speaking out and exposing this is helping. I know that you tweeted out yesterday that your reporting cost to NGOs, those are non-governmental organizations for all of you out there, to lose multi-million-dollar contracts. And I'm grateful for that. I am grateful for that. These people have been pocketing money off the backs of misery for too long. And by the way, some of these NGOs, their leadership, they're making, $500,000 a year, $600,000 a year salaries, $200,000 a year. They're making all that money. It's not going into the pockets of the children and of the people, but of the NGOs that I believe are abusing and taking money from their donors and from the American people. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, my boss who sent out that email that I've been speaking of, he would show up. He would sometimes show up in a in a Mercedes Benz. He would sometimes show up in a Tesla. He would sometimes show up in a 2022 brand new Toyota truck. He always had a different vehicle for every day. And he had the most expensive watch on. He was, you could just tell with everything, the way he carried himself, the way he dressed, what he drove, that he was making insane amounts of money. And here he is sending out an email saying, you guys are sending off children to the wrong people. Don't do it again. And then it's just like a throwaway comment. Like, how about you do your job and actually stop this? And it's just, you're accepting all this money, but you're not doing your job. Like, what's going on here? And
so frustrating.
And there's this, I forget the name of the company, but there's one company are you familiar with Pecos, Texas? So there's a shelter there that President Biden opened up in 2021, and it's a mega shelter. It's meant to hold 3,000 children. And I think right now there's about 700 children in there. But this shelter in the Pecos facility, in 2021 alone, their contract was worth $500 billion. And it was meant to, this contract of $500 billion was for medical services, for teaching services. And it's not just for 1 year. It was spread out over for about 4, I misspoke, not billion, million, but it's still crazy amounts of money.
Yeah,
so
it is. It's crazy. Yeah.
For, 500 million, $500 million for I think it was 2.5 years was the contract. And they probably renewed it for the same amount of money. So this is the type of money that's thrown around. It's in the 100 millions. It's never below that, and people don't understand that.
And all the while we have American vets sleeping out in the streets, we have people in our country that are poverty stricken or need mental health help, and children that need to be rescued and found. Instead, we're just dumping more and more money into these NGOs. And you're absolutely right. And it was Pecos, Texas. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services took this. It was a former camp for oil workers. It then became a camp for children where they would house children, and they now are continuing to house children in federal custody. And this is kind of overseen by HHS, right? And the Office of Refugee Resettlement, which is also a part of that whole, I guess, that whole network supposedly for protecting children.
Yeah, exactly. And it's frustrating because there's no oversight for ORR, for the Office of Refugee Resettlement. When you think of the government, you think of HHS, you think of DHS, you think of Homeland Security, but a lot of people don't even know what ORR is. And they look at you like, what's that, And they talk about accountability. But a lot of people don't understand that when Congress approves money for the border, I think this last time they approved 14, I forget the exact number, but say they approve 14 billion for the border.
Right.
About 25% of that, close to half of it, is going to go to the ORR program. But people think that it's going to go to Border Patrol agents and all that. No, it doesn't go to Border Patrol agents. It gets spread out to ORR for the flight tickets, for the kids in these camps. The kids will tell you, oh, they have a PlayStation 5 for us in the camp. They have a Nintendo Switch. They have iPads in these shelters for us. So you have all these things inside the shelters that taxpayer money is going to. Why? Because they want to keep the kids happy. Because a lot of these kids had told me, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to go back to my home country, but they don't let me. So what the NGOs do is they buy iPads, they buy Nintendos, they buy PlayStations, just to try to get the kids happy enough so they won't request to go back to their home country. So a
Let
lot
me
of
ask you this. Did they ever tell you how they even validate? I mean, we're not really validating who these kids are going to, are we?
So the crazier part about that is, here's another thing that the Trump administration did very well. In the Trump administration, say you want to become a sponsor and you want to bring one of these children, migrant children, into your home. Whoever else lives in your home during the Trump administration, your husband, say you have a sister living with you, they all have to be background checked. So during the Trump administration, you could not accept a child without everybody in your home going through a background check. During the Biden administration right now, none of that is happening. Say the sponsor has a boyfriend who is a felon, who is some bad person, they're not required to get a background check if a child's going to go live in there. But during the Trump administration, you had to get a background done. And you had to get fingerprints done as well. So
does it blow your mind? Does it blow your mind when you think about it? Because you said when you first thought about President Trump, like a lot of Latino people and Hispanic people that I spoke to, they were afraid. They're like, because they would see all these commercials about, from the Democrats about that he's a racist, that he doesn't care about the Hispanic people, that he's, they gave every name in the book to President Trump. It was completely unbelievable to me after knowing him. But does it blow your mind that the amount of lies that were made about President Trump, when you actually see from where your vantage point and where you were working, the difference between the Trump administration and the Biden administration as far as policy and working with HHS and dealing with immigration?
Oh, definitely, because for example, what you're saying is, when I used to work under the Trump administration, President Trump visited the children's shelters multiple times. And I remember this because we would all fight with each other. Like, I want to work that day because President Trump's going to be there. I want to see him. And everybody would get in a fight over who wanted to be on the schedule. And not just him, Vice President Pence would also visit these shelters. And it was more than once. And you fast forward to now, Biden hasn't even, he visited, what's it called? He visited El Paso when the worst part of the border is south of El Paso. Eagle Pass, all that stuff, he didn't visit it. And there's been no politician who's visited the children's shelters. No one on the federal level has taken up this children's stuff until most recently. Now, Josh Hawley was in a hearing going after Robin Dunn-Marcos, the ORR director. But it's all talk, they all do it during hearings, but no one goes down to Texas to see these shelters. And
well, I'm going to do that. I'm here in Texas anyways, and I want to focus on the children. I want to continue working with you, Carlos, whatever we can do. Let's find a way, you and I, to talk. And I'm going to reach out to some people here in Texas as well. I think that you're doing God's work by exposing this. I would like to talk to you about things that I think you can do. I don't know if you've been out talking to people in the communities, but I think that would be, number one, that would be great to get you out there telling people the truth so that they understand and know it, because so many people have been lied to. Do you know what I mean? So
no,
there's
exactly.
gotta be.
And they ask me all the time, the talks I've had with DC is they've asked me, how do you see this being fixed? And the answer is the program has to close because children are being trafficked. But the thing that I want the most is, it wouldn't kill a politician, to visit one shelter and talk to these kids randomly. And I would bet my life on it that at least one child will say, I've been asking to go back to my country and they don't want to let me. And what's You know, even if it's just one child, it's enough, you know? If one child says, I don't want to be here in Texas, I don't want to be here in the United States anymore, I've been in this shelter for too long, I want to go home. That's enough, you know, enough to go in there and do a random visit of, hey, we're going to interview these children one-on-one and see what they have to say. And no one does
guys,
it.
And the operative word there is random visit. Don't set it up. If you're a senator, you can go in and just say, open the doors. I want to go in and see the shelter now. You don't even need to set up that visit. I guarantee you can go in with your oversight, right? That's why we have these lawmakers there, to conduct oversight over our taxpayer dollars. Just go in, walk into the hotels, say, I want to talk to a child. Do not get bullied around by these bureaucrats and NGOs that are busy stealing money from the American people and are putting children's lives in danger. Before I let you go, Carlos, I'm going to be bringing you back on the show again. I hope you come back on, because there's so much more I want to ask you and talk to you about. But what is next for you? What are you doing now? What are you looking forward to in the future?
My most recent experience with, you know, like I mentioned, with people in DC, I've been so grossed out to the point where I just want to go back to living a 9-to-5 life. I want to, as terrible as this is to say, because like you said, it's important I speak out, but at the same time, I just want some normalcy back in my life, you know? And it's frustrating when you talk to people in Washington and you see no progress. So if I know people listening to your show, and I know you have people in Congress who listen to your show, I've seen that they follow you on certain social media platforms, I've gotten close to giving up hope. So I just want, if people think like, oh, Carlos, you're getting attention, money out of this. No, I'm not. It's been a terrible. I like speaking out, but my life is everywhere right now, and I just want some normalcy. And I'm not saying I'm not going to come back on the show, but I just want someone to actually care, you know. And for my future is, I'm going to keep trying, but it's a tough road. If anything, just please pray for the situation, pray for the children, and pray that a politician actually cares enough to do something about it, because it's only getting worse.
Thank you, Carlos, for coming on my show today. I can't wait to get you back on. Please make sure you are subscribed to the Sara Carter Show here on your favorite podcast app. It really helps us. If you are on Apple Podcasts, guys, please give us a 5-star rating. We really appreciate it. It makes a difference. Follow me on Truth at Sara Carter Official, on X at Sara Carter DC, and on Instagram at SCarterDC. God bless you. God bless our great nation. Pray for peace in the Middle East and around the world. And God bless the great state of Texas. And please, God, bless our Jewish brothers and sisters. They are up against a very dangerous time.